Hi everyone and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be answering the question, how do you spot a psychopath? Now, if you watch my videos regularly, you'll know that I try to make them as practical as possible. So rather than giving you an exhaustive list of all the traits, which there are up to 200 by the way, I thought it might be more helpful to go through the following three questions. Number one, how do you recognize the traits? Number two, can they love someone in a relationship? And number three, how do you deal with a person who has traits of psychopathy? So let's start with question number one. How do you recognize the traits? It's important here to understand that psychopathy isn't a diagnosis in itself. It's a term that's used to describe a combination of personality traits and behaviors. The reason for this is that people who display these traits, or what we refer to as psychopathic traits, lie on a spectrum. They range from low to high levels of these traits. So some people may only exhibit a few of these traits occasionally, whereas others will have many of these traits all of the time. This means that sometimes it can be difficult to identify whether or not someone is a psychopath. But having said that, there are a number of traits that tend to stand out more than others, especially when they are present in clusters. These traits are glibness and superficial charm, grandiosity, callousness, low levels of empathy and interpersonal emotions, impulsivity, irresponsibility, low levels of anxiety and fear, manipulativeness, and a lack of remorse or shame. Now, the easiest way to spot these traits is to pay attention to any red flags that occur within the context of an interpersonal relationship. Interpersonal relationships are the relationships that we have with other people, and it's in these types of relationships where we are most likely to see these traits emerge. For example, we might find that someone is extremely charming and charismatic, but then when we look deeper, we see that this person is manipulative and deceptive, or we might find that someone is irresponsible and impulsive, yet they lack any feelings of remorse or guilt. There are also some very specific behavioral signs to look out for. One of the main ones is an absence of genuine, long-lasting close friendships. Now, I should point out at this point that just because someone doesn't have any close friends doesn't mean that they are a psychopath. Lots of people struggle to make friends for various reasons, but if you notice that a person doesn't have any close friends and when asked about their friendships, they either don't talk about it much or they seem defensive or dismissive about it, it could be something to be aware of. Another specific sign is being evasive when questioned. Now, lots of people dislike being questioned. It's often uncomfortable and sometimes invasive. But if we notice that someone seems overly suspicious of the motives behind the questioning, or they become extremely agitated or upset by being asked questions, especially if those questions relate to topics that they seem uncomfortable with, then again this could be another sign. Also, if you notice that the person struggles to maintain long-term stable relationships, whether that's romantic relationships, friendships, or even family relationships, and if those relationships tend to end due to the person's behavior, then again, this could be another sign. But it is important to remember that having one or two of these signs doesn't necessarily mean that someone is a psychopath. It's really when you notice several of these signs together that it becomes more concerning. Let's move on now to question number two. Can a psychopath love someone? The answer to this question is probably going to disappoint a lot of you, but it's yes. Psychopaths can and do experience romantic attraction and they can fall in love. However, it is important to distinguish between the type of love that they feel and the type of love that we typically see in healthy individuals. In healthy individuals, love is typically associated with a deep sense of care, affection, attachment, trust, respect, commitment, and loyalty towards another person. But in psychopaths, love tends to be more of a calculated decision based on what they perceive as the best option for them at the time. Psychopaths tend to enter into relationships looking for something. Maybe it's social status, money, power. They tend to see other people as objects that they can use to get those things. In fact, research suggests that psychopaths tend to view relationships more like transactions. Once they feel that they've gotten what they wanted from the relationship, then they tend to discard the other person, although it's important to note that they tend to get bored very quickly in relationships. So even if they aren't using the other person for their own gain, they still tend to leave the relationship once they feel that it's no longer serving them. So now we come to the final question. How do you deal with a person who has psychopathic traits? As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, psychopathy is a term that's used to describe a cluster of personality traits and behaviors. This means that there is no single cause of these traits and therefore there is no cure. But there are a number of strategies that we can use to help us cope with dealing with such a person. Here are a few. Number 1, be aware of the traits. As I explained in the previous section, it is important to be aware of the common psychopathic traits so that we are able to spot them, just because someone displays a few of these traits doesn't make them a psychopath. It is only when you notice several of these traits occurring together that it might be something to be concerned about. Number 2, don't engage in arguments. Arguing with someone who has psychopathic traits is like arguing with a brick wall. It's pointless. These people are notoriously difficult to get through to. They are often unremorseful and unrepentant, even when confronted with evidence of their harmful actions. Number 3, set boundaries. It's important to set clear boundaries with people who have psychopathic traits. This can be difficult because they tend to be very manipulative and charming. But it's important to be firm and consistent with your boundaries. Otherwise, they will take advantage of you. If you find that they are unwilling to respect your boundaries, then it's probably best to distance yourself from them. Number 4, don't expect empathy. People with psychopathic traits tend to have very little empathy. This means that they are unlikely to be able to understand or care about your feelings. Number 5, be prepared for manipulation. Manipulation is another trait that is common in people who have psychopathic traits. It's important to be aware of this and to be on guard against manipulation tactics. And finally, no. 6. Seek professional help if necessary. If you are struggling to cope with someone who has psychopathic traits, then it's important to seek professional help. A therapist can teach you coping mechanisms and help you to develop a plan for dealing with the situation. In conclusion, psychopathy is a term that is used to describe a cluster of personality traits and behaviors that can make a person very charming and charismatic. But underneath the surface, they tend to be manipulative, deceptive, and even dangerous. It is important to be aware of the signs of psychopathy so that we can protect ourselves from these types of people. Psychopaths can and do experience romantic attraction and they can fall in love. But their love tends to be more of a calculated decision rather than a deep sense of care and affection. Finally, if you are dealing with a person who has psychopathic traits, it's important to be aware of the signs, set boundaries, don't expect empathy, be prepared for manipulation, and seek professional help if necessary. Thank you for watching. I hope you found the video useful. If you have any thoughts or experiences that you would like to share with me, please do so in the comments below. And please remember to like and subscribe before you go.